In the last 20 years, we have received some truly incredible superhero games, particularly built around Batman and Spider-Man, and today I wanted to discuss a gameplay loop that I'd love to see implemented in future superhero games. And while I think these gameplay features would fit nearly any comic book character very well, I think a Batman game that utilizes this gameplay loop would be really fun. Spider-Man is actually the protagonist that I would consider the most suited to carry these mechanics. The ideas I'm going to share today are so built around choices and consequences, and those would fit so incredibly with Spider-Man's mantra of power and responsibility. So with all of that out of the way, I'm just going to cut to the chase and pitch this thing. I think that whenever Insomniac's done with their Spider-Man franchise, the next iteration should be a game that opens on the first time that Peter dons the Spider-Man suit and goes out to fight crime and save civilians. The difference is that rather than telling a linear story with a predetermined ending, it would be built around branched narrative mechanics. There would be plenty of sequences where you would not be in the Spider-Man suit. You would be walking around as Peter Parker. You'd walk around Midtown High, you'd walk around the Daily Bugle, and interact with other characters. Peter's friendships and rivalries would be completely driven by you. You might play a version of the game where you end up being really close friends with Flash Thompson because of how you've worked with him throughout the course of the game. In another save, you may still end the game as enemies, but maybe in this version you're really close with Gwen Stacy. This branching narrative would also heavily bleed into the gameplay as Spider-Man as well. You'd have the option to customize your suit. You'd have the ability to modify your web shooters to act the way that you want them to. You could choose which villains to go after in which order and which banter to engage with them in while fighting them. There would be numerous segments where there would be two or more things going on at the same time. For example, maybe both Scorpion and Electro are going after advanced tech to improve their abilities, and you can only stop one. This might lead to a sequence where you easily take down Electro, but then Scorpion is now a really formidable boss fight later on. Another example could be that Rhino is rampaging through Central Park, but you're also late to class and you're one strike away from a detention. Or maybe you're rushing to stop Vulture and then you get a call from Aunt May saying you need to come home right now. There are so many interesting dynamics that could be built around the characters. The game could even go as far as building out a different main antagonist depending on the choices you make. For example, maybe you have an internship with Dr. Connors. If you work closely with him, you may be able to catch the issues with his lizard serum and stop him from taking it. But maybe in order to do that, you have to neglect the Green Goblin's crimes around the city, leading to him being the main antagonist. Whereas in another version of the game, you might go around and quickly wipe out the Green Goblin's operation, but then Kirk Connors becomes the lizard and he becomes the primary antagonist. This would also work really well when you started introducing DLC or sequels, because you could carry that save into that sequel. If you prevented Kirk Connors from becoming the lizard in the first game, he might become a different version of the lizard in the second game. Sequels could also introduce something like the Symbiote, and maybe when you have it on, the nicer choices in the branch dialogue are unavailable, so you kind of have to be a jerk, but taking out criminals is much easier, and you as a player have to decide how long you wear it for. When is enough enough? When have you driven your friends away far enough that you just can't bear to keep this thing anymore? I love the idea of not just playing as Spider-Man, but getting to feel like I'm shaping my own story as the character. I'm getting to play through my own hero's journey as Spider-Man and make the choices that I would make. It would then be fun to compare saves with my friends. I could say, yeah, I ended the game by defeating Kirk Connors as the Lizard. I'm really close friends with MJ and Harry. I'm working for the Daily Bugle, and I'm really excited to see where the sequel goes. And my friend might say, dude, I had a completely different experience. My character's closest friends at the end of the game were Flash Thompson and Liz Allen, and I just defeated Green Goblin and Rhino in a huge final boss fight. There could also be some interesting subplots that shake things up too. For example, maybe Felicia Hardy is involved in the story, and there could still be some fun collectibles around the city. And there would also be some agency around that. If you decide that you want to work at the Daily Bugle, for example, then a lot of the side missions could be focused on photo ops. Whereas if you decide that you want to work with Dr. Connors, then maybe you're doing more scientific experiments around the city. This is my dream Spider-Man game, and really in a lot of ways my dream Batman game as well, because not only would it give you a really fun open world sandbox to experience and a really cohesive story depending on the choices you make, but it would also allow you to really live within this world and this fiction. The biggest hurdle I see to a game like this is it would be really ambitious, but I think it's worth noting that many games have already done this. The Telltale games have done branched narratives, the Mass Effect games included branched narratives, and a lot of combat and more traditional action-adventure mechanics. We're seeing an iteration of an idea like this with the BioShock creator Ken Levine's upcoming game Judas, and even the Middle-earth game's Nemesis system was heavily built around your choices and interactions with other characters. So this isn't something that would be brand new, this is something that we've seen in the past. The trade-off is that I could see the reality being that the graphics need to be toned down a little bit in order to accommodate multiple different cutscenes and versions of the game. I could see the story being closer to 6 to 8 hours instead of 12 to 15. I could see some set pieces needing to be toned down since, frankly, many of them would be missable. There would always be another set piece that you might see instead. But the replayability factor would be through the roof. There could be like a dozen versions of the game to play through before you'd kind of seen all the content that you could see. And more than anything, the immersion of crafting your own journey as Spider-Man would be something that we just haven't really seen in the past. Like I've also mentioned a few times, I think Batman would be a fantastic character to apply these mechanics to as well. That would be an interesting scenario because Bruce Wayne has a lot of influence over Gotham City, and you could make choices that affect the infrastructure of Gotham. I've actually done a full video talking about some of my ideas for a Batman game, and these are very similar. Imagine a game where you could play as Bruce Wayne and invest in different facilities of the city. Maybe you could upgrade Arkham Asylum so that breakouts from criminals are less frequent. You could invest in the Gotham PD, where random crimes around the city would be lessened, but the cops would be hunting Batman even more. You could invest in either Harvey Dent or Hamilton Hill's campaign, and that could affect the future of the story. If you were suspicious of Gothamites of potentially working for criminals, you could maybe host an event at Wayne Manor and put them on the guest list, and then go and interact with them with a dialogue-based choice system. When you were playing as Batman, maybe you could learn about Mr. Freeze and learn how to build your Batsuit in order to go toe-to-toe with him. Maybe you need to modify your gloves to produce heat waves, and you need to fortify your suit to be able to take direct hits from his freeze gun. There could be some areas in the city where stealth just isn't an option, and maybe you need to fly the Batwing around because the streets are too crowded for the Batmobile. Maybe there are other areas where there are just too many hostages or too many enemies on the ground where you have to be really stealthy. They could take the dual play mechanic from Arkham Knight, except it's where you get to pick who your sidekicks are. And you could have one save where you're working with Batgirl and dual playing with Batgirl, and another where instead you recruit Robin and are working closely with him. Overall, I'm a huge fan of this idea of giving the player the ability to shape the story and have to make the choices that reflect the story's direction. I love the idea of superhero games where, because of your choices, a threat has emerged, and then you have to create a suit or an ability that will be able to take them down. The immersion of these kinds of mechanics would just be so insane, and it's something that I would love to see. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about some of the ideas, and please be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Also, feel free to let me know in the comments below, what is your dream superhero game? Thanks again so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.